a lot of things about it. The proof is in the demo. And every time we've used it, we've been impressed with the results. So I think I'll quote Jeremy by saying, "Yeah, hey, now that's actually really good." I'll quote Jeremy by saying, "Yeah, when that happens, now that's especially with ChatGPT, you know you're onto something." So when that happens, that's especially with ChatGPT,
Do I hear
you know you're
someone
onto
in the
something.
background?
So when that happens,
Our producers? No, I thought I heard.
I thought I heard someone too.
Yeah. All right. So. Okay.
Start over.
Okay. So we've just received notice there was a glitch in the screen in the stream, and so we may have missed the intro. So in that case, let's quickly do that again. Dune. Who are you and why are you in the stream where Andrew and I are usually sitting doing discussions and demos of artificial intelligence?
Well, now I can't use all my jokes, the same jokes. Real quick then, my name is Dune Malakzadeh. I go by Dune. It's just too many letters. And I've been a designer, design leader, design manager for 20 plus years. Worked at both a number of agencies, Frog Design, Sapient, big corporations, Microsoft, Samsung, AT&T, and some mid-sized organizations and startups as well. And I also had tried my hand at my own startup and failed. But I've been doing this for 20 plus years. Part of what motivates me and has motivated me for years is I love tools. I love tools. Just, having a toolbox with all the right tools, and you've got a problem that you need to address, and you've got the right thing, it's joyful. And that love for me is translated into much of what I do. So what we're going to be looking at today, Merlin, is just another example of a tool that I needed, that I was able to use, craft, and refine to help me with my own process of applying for jobs that I found could be beneficial and helpful to other folks too.
Cool.
So that's a little bit about me and what we're doing.
Not knowing where our stream broke in or out, we'll just summarize it from a high level. The first half, we're going to be looking at you doing this from the front end as if we were a job applicant. And this is a publicly accessible, well, relatively publicly accessible. If you have the paid version of ChatGPT 4, correct, you can use a custom GPT. If you're using the free version, I think it's off limits, is my understanding, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So that's the first half, and then the second half, we're going to look at how you made the thing. So I repeated some of this to the audience. My apologies, but let's fast forward it. And maybe you want to start sharing your screen, and let's kind of dig in as if we were someone. In this case, whose name is Dune, because we're going to use you as an example, correct? Like your own
exactly. We're going to do this live, so we're going to experience ChatGPT in all of its glory, or whatever the opposite of that is. So I've got a couple of jobs queued up, but before we get into that, I want to show you how to find Merlin. So if you're in your ChatGPT instance, you'll click on Explore GPTs and search for Merlin. There it is, top one. There are plenty of other ones named Merlin, but they don't do what I do. So you're looking for Merlin, the job application wizard. So you'll click on that, start a chat, and for orientation's sake, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and have Merlin explain the 10 steps for the first time. The next time you go through, you can just say, start the 10 steps with this job and give it a job URL or a document. But we'll go ahead and have it walk us through this as if it were the first time. And while this is building, you know, exactly what was said at some point in the prologue to this. This Merlin was born out of my own process. I had over a couple of months in applying for roles, come up with this process that I would go through to research roles, research companies, try to understand the job description, summarize it, figure out if I was a fit for it, then begin tailoring my resume, writing a cover letter, trying to assess if I had any growth opportunities or gaps in my skill set and how I could address them. So all of that was pretty straightforward. It was a pretty a straightforward process. It was repetitive. It wasn't hard, but the process itself was arduous because I was going back and redoing the same process, opening the same tabs, and just cut, copy, paste, cut, copy, paste. And that's where I realized that there was a process here that I could automate. All right, so that's what I've since turned into to Merlin. So these are the 10 steps. We'll see how many we get through. I've picked a job to feed it. So it's asking me for my name, and then it's going to ask me for my resume. So ChatGPT is a little fickle when it comes to accessing web content. Sometimes it won't accept the link. Let's see how it does.
Okay, so this, you're actually not your resume, but your job description.
All right, job description.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So
this time it worked.
Yeah, awesome. So what it's doing is it's going to this URL and it's sucking down kind of all the details and trying to format it. Yeah.
Right, because I mean, a lot of us have seen these job descriptions. They're long, right? There's a lot of copy, and sometimes you just want to know what are the three main responsibilities for the role. So this gives you at a glance the company mission and values, the main responsibilities of the role, what problem this role might be solving within the organization, and what kind of candidate profile might fit this job best.
Sorry, just to be clear, so this is actually interpreting and rewriting the original description. Is that correct? Like it's not just copy and pasting it; it's actually remixing it.
It's reinterpreting, it's summarizing, and in some cases, based on the role, it's supposed to also go out and do a little research on the company. Okay. So I think in this case, since it had information about like the mission and values, it didn't do that. But in other cases, it'll actually use its browsing capabilities to go pull that in from the company website. A little bit about employee sentiment. And it begins assessing the job descriptions for some possible keywords. Right, so this gives you a good high-level overview of the job, right? Summarized in a bit more of a digestible format.
And that's great because we all know how keywords have seemed to taken over the the world of jobs and job descriptions and applying. It's like everything funnels down to keywords, so that's great.
Right. So step 2 is asking me for my resume. So I have a resume prepared. I tend to give ChatGPT, or Merlin in this case, a text based resume, so it's just quicker and easier for it to parse. It'll also accept PDFs though, but just because some of the PDFs might be formatted a different way, it might choke on them. So one of the things you'll see it does here, it's giving my resume a rating, right, based on keyword matching and how close my current resume as is matches the job description. So I look at that and I say, well, if I get like a better than a 7 out of 10, I may just stay with my resume. I may not tailor it.
Mm-hmm. So this is kind of doing a similar thing, just to be clear. This is kind of taking your existing resume and optimizing or rewriting it in a way. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And one thing that you'll notice, there's a lot of italicized words. Those italicized words are kind of just like a clue for me that those are the keywords.
Oh.
So when it's actually taken the keywords and massaged them and worked them into the resume, it has instructions to italicize them so that I notice them. And if I notice them, then the hiring manager or the recruiter may notice them as well. So it's rewritten my resume. I can take this, copy, and then paste it into a different document and format it and use it. So for folks who have not used GPT a lot lately, ChatGPT can sometimes become a little lazy and disobedient. In this case, it's supposed to rewrite my entire resume. This little ellipsis here is telling me that it didn't do the whole thing.
It didn't bother. I like how explicit that is, because that's really clear that
and when that happens, you can reprompt it and say, could you go ahead and finish the whole thing, and it'll do it. It'll do it.
Right.
But for the in the interest of time, we won't do that. So now that you've got an understanding of the job, you've got an understanding of the keywords, the responsibilities, how your resume maps to that. The next part of this is about figuring out how you position yourself with respect to this role. So it'll ask you some questions around, what your goals are, achievements, etc. You can do that every time, or do what I did, and that is prepare a document ahead of time.
Okay.
So in this, I put in just a bunch of stuff, right? Things that I care about, things, my point of view on design, philosophy. Mostly, I'm giving it a lot of content that it may or may not use, but it's also learning my tone and voice from this. And this, honestly, this is the basis for the magic, because in the subsequent in the steps to follow, Merlin will reference my resume. It'll reference it'll reference the content from this document to write better cover letters, right? Write better connection requests. So based on what I provided it with, go ahead.
I'm just curious. Would you? Is it possible to just show us one of the, or just read out one of the bullet points in that text file? Just almost at random. Just kind of curious, just to.
So like what I've put in that text file, if you can read this.
Just one of them, just like any line.
So my approach, it's holistic, considering every customer touch point as an opportunity to strengthen the brand and enhance user engagement.
Okay.
Right? So it knows a bit about my approach, my design philosophy, emphasizing and understanding user needs, et cetera, et cetera. So it has this, and when it makes sense for it to use, it'll pull that in. And that's what helps the content that comes out of Merlin sound a lot more human and personalized, because I've trained it on data that I've written. So that's just a document I've written once, and I use it every time. One thing that I'm particularly proud about with Merlin is if you've used Zero GPT. Zero GPT is a website where you can copy and paste content into, and it'll do an assessment to determine whether or not the copy was written by AI. And in my case, I would say I've got like a 90% success rate with the copy being generated in Merlin passing the test. So it almost doesn't think it's AI.
Got it.
So here's an elevator pitch that it created based off of my resume and the copy I provided it with. I use elevator pitches as I have them in my back pocket to help me answer the question. Tell me about yourself when I get on the phone with a hiring manager or recruiter, because the worst time for you to figure that out is when you're on the phone with the hiring manager or the recruiter. So you want to have that ready, right? And I would say that that is part of the, and we're going to go ahead and continue to the next step. Part of the uh, uh, mission or goal or spirit of Merlin isn't so much in helping you fill out the boxes for the application. It's to help you with the pre-application process. It's to have some of these things worked out, thought about, so that when you get to the application, you have everything ready. Because the thing that I was coming across is that you're filling out those forms, you upload your resume, and then there's the button for cover letter, right? And you're like, well, I want to finish this. I want to apply in the next 5 minutes, right? Now I have to stop. I have to go. I have to write a cover letter. That's going to take me who knows how long. So this was part of the intention with Merlin. All right.
And we all know that cover letters are often just this strange formality left over from like the 1950s that like everyone still is like,
maybe they
I don't know.
Maybe they're not. I've heard that if you upload a cover letter, the ATS systems will also scan the cover letter for keywords. So I figure in this day and age where it's the Hunger Games right now for jobs, anything I can do to differentiate myself or position myself to succeed, I'll do it. All right. So for the cover letter, speaking of, it's asking me if I have any particular reason that I'm applying for this. Do I, and the idea here was, in order for me to create a compelling cover letter, I want to be able to connect with the brand or the company or the mission in some sort of way. So if I had that, in this case, I don't know what checker even is, but in this case, I don't have anything that I can put in here. I'll just have it go ahead and write my cover letter based on what it already has.
Okay. Yeah, when we were playing with this earlier, we were looking at a job at Warner Brothers, and we searched the news, and it basically said like, oh, there's a new partnership between Looney Tunes and the Olympic Committee, and so we kind of faked it out, and we're not even faked it out, but just said like, yeah, well, I'm a longtime Looney Tunes fan, and so
exactly. So you could do that. Yeah. So it's pulled in some things from my about document, like my interest in AI. And if I was happy with this, I could say this is good enough, right? You can also have it like redo the intro to incorporate an attention grabbing, and it seems to like the term attention grabbing.
Yeah, so Andrew, you and I were talking earlier when we were playing with this that it's important to realize that even though this is a pre-made rail, I guess, that you can still do all the tricks that we've learned.
Like, exactly.
Yeah, right. Emphasize certain things, apply a certain voice, a different approach, so on and so forth. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to say we're good with this. Continue to next step. So proof points. What I mean by proof points, and I was given some advice by a recruiter last year that my job as a job seeker is to make it as simple as possible for a recruiter to see that I check all the boxes for a role. And the suggestion was to actually go through the job description and respond to each bullet point in the job description. And that's what I'm calling proof points.
Okay. Oh, I see.
And so what it's supposed to do, given the detailed nature of the step, and keep our home, can you remind me of so it, even though ChatGPT knows, I'm going to go ahead and feed it the the job
It
description.
went on a little lunch break, and then when it came back, it was like, what am I doing here?
Yeah, yeah. The way I would describe my experience with it losing track of where things are or just being lazy is the fabled. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah.
uh,
Right. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Now it's doing it.
Yeah.
So it's taking these bullet points, right? And it's taking content from my resume and from that about document that I gave it, and it's been told to respond to each point in the first person.
Mm.
So it's writing it as if it were me, and it's referencing things right out of my resume. I led a 50-person team. I work at Circ Robotics. I work at Smartsheet on this. So it's beginning to pull these things into the document. We won't do the rest of this, but basically you would do the same thing.
Okay.
You would copy the rest. And what I do with this, so we've seen the cover letter, and now we've seen the proof points. And what I do with this, so here's a job that I'm applying to. I did this last night. I had Merlin create a cover letter for me, which it did. And then in it, I say, in an effort to help you review my candidacy, I've taken the liberty to address every point in the job description, which are the proof points. And basically, I've created a 4-page cover letter, right? Or it's a 1-page cover letter with attachment. And I did the same thing. I go through, and for every point in the job description, I copy and paste this section into the document. And I check it, of course. I would never trust anything that comes out of ChatGPT as is.
Yeah.
So I'll go in, I'll edit, I'll tweak, I'll maybe add case study links to my website portfolio so that there's a jumping off point to some of those answers. And feedback I've gotten from recruiters has been that they appreciate the effort. They have seldom seen someone put so much work into an application. And in many cases, that document has been passed on directly to the hiring manager.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
All right, moving on. So making good connections. This is about, again, dealing with the blank page problem. All right, so now you want to reach out to someone on LinkedIn. Maybe it's the hiring manager, maybe it's the recruiter, and every single time you have to rewrite that connection request. You also have to know that the connection requests are 300 characters, limited to 300 characters. So I fed those kinds of limitations into ChatGPT so that it knows when it writes a connection request for me to keep it under 250 characters. I'm keeping 50 for buffer.
Right.
And in any of these cases, if you don't quite like it, you can ask it to give you another, and maybe make it more formal, make it more informal. Use slang. So I would always consider what Merlin gives you in its first pass as just that. It's a first pass. If you like it, great. If you don't, you can ask it to do it again.
Yeah.
So it gives you two different types of messages. One, it gives you the standard LinkedIn connection request, which is 250 characters. If you have InMail with LinkedIn, you can go longer. So
I see.
And so I also have it create a subject line and to work in some sort of message that helps make the case for me as a candidate and communicates my enthusiasm for the role.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And do you find yourself kind of rewriting I mean, I know you said that you do, but I'm just curious, how much time and effort would you say you kind of put to massaging these? Is it, I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you that
5 minutes.
Yeah. It's I think where I spend most of the time is in the copying and pasting, unfortunately.
Right.
Formatting. I'm hoping the next version of GPT lets me create downloadable documents and format them a bit better. So you could just, ideally, in the next iteration or two, You just click on the download link and you're good to go.
Got it.
But yes, I will always go through and tweak and edit. Like I said, I'll sometimes add links to my portfolio for relevant case studies. So we've moved on to the next point, which is a SWOT analysis. I think most people are probably familiar with the SWOT analysis, so I won't go into the detail of it here. But it tells you, based on your resume, what your strengths and weaknesses are, opportunities, and if there's ways for you to maybe close the gap on some of those opportunities.
Cool.
All right. Proceed. So step 8, this is Merlin having a look at the job description and trying to figure out what the likely questions are. And again, these I would view as a starting point. It's improvising at the moment. It's telling you to use the STAR method, which is fine. I like the STAR method. But it'll also prompt you with some questions to ask the recruiter or to ask the hiring manager. If it's a managerial role with direct reports, it'll also give you some questions to ask about the team you'll be managing. So
awesome.
It'll parse that.
And I have to say again, when we were Andrew and I were looking at a version of this earlier, I think this is such a strong element of this, because I could tell you from both sides, interviewing candidates for a job, as well as in the past applying for jobs. But interviewing the candidate for jobs, the number of people who don't seem to have any questions for you and they're applying was always mind-boggling to me. I'm like, here's the chance. Like, this is the conversation.
What do you want to know?
Yeah. Like, you can prove to me that you've actually looked at the sort of things that we've done, and the number of people who just kind of like, no, I'm good. Like, I don't really have any questions. You're like, huh.
Yeah.
Like, that is like the red flag. And so the fact that, to me, like, these are really targeted and kind of interesting questions is so valuable.
Yeah, it's a starting point. I think what happens in a lot of the situations, at least it happens to me, is you have a deer in the headlights moment, right? Like, the question is coming, but then you're not really prepared, or you know.
It's true. Yeah.
So this is a good anchor to kind of fall back on.
That's when you conveniently take a little index card out and you're just like, yes, the question.
Well, if we get past step 10, you're not going to need an index card.
Yeah, it's true.
So step 9, real quick, is this is to help you position yourself as an expert in the field. If you haven't thought about it, or haven't thought about posting about a topic that's relevant or germane to the job description or to the industry, this helps you do that. So based on the job description and your skills, it'll help you draft a LinkedIn post so that you can post that on LinkedIn. It also gives you the best time of day and hour to post your LinkedIn post. So we're going to go ahead and say yes, go ahead and help you become the expert, or appear as the expert. So it's going to brainstorm. It's going to make some suggestions on possible LinkedIn posts to write. If I were to select one, it's supposed to also create an attention-grabbing image to go with it.
We had a lot of fun with this feature.
Yeah.
Right. So it's asking me. So we'll say the first one. So here you go. So it's already drafting a LinkedIn post for me. Relevant to the job description, relevant to my expertise. I've also given it some instructions, so we'll see if it does it right. It's capped at a certain number of characters, because I've got research that says, how long is too long, how short is too short. And to end this LinkedIn post with an open-ended question, which it's doing, right? To encourage comments and conversation, and it's giving you a list of hashtags.
And I would say this is definitely a case to anyone watching where you better know what you're talking about so that you can double check
Yeah.
what this is feeding you, because this could be dangerous if you
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. I think we are in the home stretch in the last step. So what Merlin, and this was a feature by popular demand, a kind of a cheat sheet so that you can print it out and have it in front of you when you're interviewing. So this gives you the high level salient points of not only the job, but also of your own elevator pitch, your own key skills that are relevant to the job, how you align with the role, your top proof points, questions you should ask, and that's it. So it takes you through all 10 steps.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That's wild. So Dune, I do have a question. That document that you shared with us, where it seemed like it was almost like you riffing on questions you imagine you would love to be able to be asked in an interview, right? So it's like, what's my approach to design?
Yeah.
Does Merlin refer to that for subsequent steps? So, for example, the interview questions, does it look at how you've responded or the information you offered in that self-report to prompt you on ways to consider answering those questions as well, based on the things that you've said about your approach or your philosophy, your design philosophy, or notable achievements?
That
Did I
is
just give you
a good question. That is actually a good feature enhancement too. So I could have it not only give me the questions to ask, but also put in how I might respond to these. That's a great feature request.
Cool. I'll invoice you next week.
in Bitcoin, I'm sure.
Exactly.
ChatGPT credits.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and lastly, because finding a job is hard. There's a little bit of a pep talk here for you, just reminding folks that this process is arduous. It's hard. It can be very discouraging. But you work through this. You've got a solid body of work. I have found that seeing my own resume and my own work reframed, rewritten, rearticulated, it is a bit of a confidence booster.
Yeah,
you're like,
see that.
Yeah, I am pretty good, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna kick ass at this job, right?
Yeah. Well, and I could see too, we were talking about this even before this too, one of the scenarios where, I've seen a lot of folks who, may have been at the same position for quite a while. So they just haven't updated their resume. Like it's just a sheer matter of just like, hey, I was at this one place. And so then just like the updating part, I think for a lot of people is a revelation of like, wow, like this is what I love about this is, again, like the fact that Chet, or Merlin in this case, is taking on this role of a collaborator. So it's asking you questions, which honestly is like half the battle. Just like having someone to work with, especially so oftentimes when you're in a job seeking position, you kind of feel isolated and you're like, like I don't, where do I start? And it just feels overwhelming. And so to have just like you said, those little motivating prompts, just answer the question, like, like don't get too caught up in your own stuff.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think this is part of the problem with conversational AI like this, conversational UX, where it's the problem of query formulation. Right? It's like I don't know how to ask it to do what I want it to do, and so Merlin has taken a lot of that out. So Merlin isn't just one prompt or a couple prompts; it's probably close to 100 prompts, if not more, that have been grouped and sequenced and ingest data and then act on that data to create something else. So that's one of the main benefits of, you asked this at the beginning, That's one of the main benefits of using a GPT like Merlin, as opposed to vanilla ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Right? I've kind of set the guardrails and defined the steps for you to follow. You don't have to follow all of them. You can say, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do a SWOT. Skip this step, right? And it'll move on to the next one.
Which is actually a perfect segue to talk about like how that happened. And so we'd love to kind of switch the gears up, and again show everyone here first of all how much kind of time and effort you put into this, because again there's a lot going on here that just isn't available in the custom or in the vanilla version. So if you would, we'd love to kind of get an inside peek at kind of the things that ChatGPT is being asked to do.
Right. Happy to do that. And,
Cool.
there's questions around how much of your instructions should be, are protected. It's currently rather difficult to protect your instruction set. It might just be a limitation of the platform. But one thing I'll say is there's no special tech that I built to create Merlin. I'm basically building off of the ChatGPT platform. The intellectual property, if you will, of it is in the having thought about the process, having thought about how to organize it, having thought about the call and response between ChatGPT and the person sitting in front of it, the articulation and definition of those prompts. So I'll just give you, we'll look at.
Yeah, and I would say again, just to like your experience, right? So like the fact that that defining your brand is an important thing for anyone applying for a job is something that by itself is like kind of a revelation for a lot of people. Like,
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, exactly. This is what I was saying earlier, that the worst time for you to figure that out is when it's too late, right? When you're on the phone.
Yeah.
So this gives you just for the understand the job segment, how this is structured, right? So I tell it what kind of skills it should have, what kind of action it's going to be taking, what the output should be, and I break down as a template how I want it to present the information in the structured format. So the fact that you're getting the results, like we go all the way back to the top, the fact that you're getting the results formatted this way with bold and highlighted text, that's not accidental, right? I've gone in here and specified the double asterisk means bold. I've gone in here and I've specified a template for ChatGPT to dump this content into, so that you get this.
Dune, is there an easy way for you to enlarge the font size of that? If not, don't worry about it. Just if it's easy. If it's not, then don't.
Let me try different.
Or too much at it.
Oh, I'm on the wrong machine. Let's see.
Oh, awesome. Thanks. Yeah.
Yep.
That's perfect.
All right. So, for example, one thing it's supposed to do that it didn't do here is when it's looking at the ideal candidate profile. Let's look at another one. Maybe it did it elsewhere. It's supposed to assess the language in the job description for a likely Enneagram or Myers-Briggs type.
Okay.
Here it is. So, for example, for this role, the ideal candidate would have a blend of creativity and other skills, ideally a type 3 or type 5, which is what I am, or an INTJ.
Mm-hmm.
And the thinking here was that, sure, I want a job. I want it badly, right?
Yeah.
But I want to know for myself, is this the right job for me? Am I the right person for this role? So I built things into this process that help me slow down a bit, right? And
Mhm.
think hard about whether or not this is actually what I want or it isn't. Am I going to have some challenges if I were to get this role? And let's say it's one that's like the language in the job description is geared very much to like an ENTJ, right?
Mhm.
I'm an INTJ. So that means I'm probably going to have some challenges in how I show up, right? Doesn't mean I shouldn't apply. It just means that I'm going in with my eyes wide open and have a better understanding of where my strengths are and where my weaknesses are as I look at this role.
Or even like I would say, yeah, like to me it would be a good fodder for asking questions, right? So it's like if there's some little bullet point, because you know how oftentimes there might be 10 bullet points for a job, and one of them seems could either be like a huge part of the job or a little part, like I don't know, like public speaking, right?
Right,
and,
right,
and yeah,
right.
and you're trying to figure out like, okay, like I really couldn't do that, or I really would love to do that, but trying to parse like which of those things it is, it might just be like just ask, like maybe that's one of your important questions, like when
Yeah,
we talk about the public speaking, is that actually like what percentage of that is it?
yeah, exactly. So, you know, that's part of what goes into Merlin, and
Hmm.
I think I think at the beginning of the call we were talking about how necessity is the mother of invention. That is how this all kind of came about. And I've got a
Yeah.
couple other GPTs that I've been working on that are things that I've been doing throughout my career that are either frameworks or processes that I've developed that I figured I can automate that. I've got one for soliciting, gathering, synthesizing content for providing 360 feedback to my direct reports. Right, the process I've had was very manual. Now, what used to take me about an hour to do takes me 15 minutes to do with
Yeah.
ChatGPT, and it really lets me focus on the content and not on the process of copy and pasting, trying to figure things out. I've got another one that I've built on. It's a more in-depth, deep dive on your how you develop or define your personal brand. I'll show you real quick the interface for building. Um,
Is this one live? Can people find this yet, or is this still
yeah,
kind of
this
a
one's
work in
live. This
progress?
one's
Okay,
public.
okay,
Yeah,
cool.
that's called Calliope,
Okay.
Personal Brand Builder. Um, when you first create a GPT, you'll be taken through this wizard-like experience. So it'll ask you a bunch of questions about, what is that you want to do, what tone should it have, what's the goal, and a bunch of questions. This, I would say, is almost like the WYSIWYG view,
Hmm.
and then configure is like the code view, like the
And
markup.
for kids in the audience, WYSIWYG is what we used to call the front end software programs. What you see is what you get.
Yep.
Yes.
Like the earliest versions of
Yeah.
Dreamweaver or Go Live or things like
And
that.
and so I spend the majority of my time here in the configure window. So this is where I do all of my prompting, and so I'll just go ahead and open up this one. This one's not as complex as Merlin, but basically I have a schema that I've defined for how I build the GPT. I tell it what its mission is. I tell it that it has a security protocol to follow, what instructions are, and I start walking through the steps. So you'll see it's like what it's going to do, what it's going to reference, um, when it asks to prompt for something, what it should tell the user, how it should interact. It even makes suggestions on where to go to take a DISC or an Enneagram test. Um, uh, this one is a kind of an experiment. This is kind of a multimodal, multi-session GPT that gives you homework, and then you have to like come back to it later once you've completed your homework, and you feed it
That's a great idea. Yeah.
right. So you do this, it walks you through the whole thing. So this is basically this is the code, if you will. Again, a whole bunch of prompts, not just one, but a series of prompts that are structured and grouped in a particular way to yield a particular outcome.
That's really interesting, that one, number 10, when we look back at our early and adolescent years and clearly identify situations, people that were present, we're happy, we see a pattern emerge. So that's, yeah, I mean, that's like branding, right? It's kind of
It
like
is.
trying to understand like how your way of dealing with the world or reacting to situations, you know, permeates everything you do in
Yeah.
business versus, yeah, that's cool.
So,
That's
so
really
this
cool.
one is available for folks to play with. Unlike Merlin, where you go back to Merlin again and again for each job, Calliope you probably do once, right? And maybe again later if you want to modify or update things. But so this is the interface that I spend my time in. When you run ChatGPT, it's got a couple of prompts to help you get started. This is where you define those. If you have documents that you want to make available to ChatGPT to reference, you can load those into this view. So for example, I have got a set of instructions to try to secure the GPT that I've loaded as a set of instructions for it to follow. You list your capabilities, what you want this particular GPT to be able to do, to browse the web, to generate images, to parse and understand documents or code, and that's it. So once you've done this, this is kind of your sandbox where you can test things. And once you're happy with it, you can share it just for yourself with anyone that you want to maybe be part of your testing team, or you publish it to the store.
And it's kind of worth pointing out. So your first, we know that, like, how long has Merlin been out roughly? Like 4 months, 5 months, or
When did the GPT store launch?
November, I think.
Yeah, so I was in like from the very beginning because I'd already been playing around with it and working on it, and I'd already developed Merlin for myself,
right?
And had been using it. And when the GPT store launched, I put it into the store. Yeah.
And we know that it's been really popular for a number of reasons. One of which you can see in the store, like it's been used. I think it looked like it over 10,000 times or something like. I don't know. There was a
it's
stat in there.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means exactly.
It's
the other, So the other part too, another indication of that, the popularity of this is, as they say, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So we have heard that you had a little misappropriation of your popular ChatGPT. Can you talk about that?
Yes. This touches on an interesting topic. So yes, I
to
have
the degree you can and you're comfortable, we would love to hear.
So in the first week or so that I had published Merlin to the GPT store, it kind of took off. Already by the beginning of the second week, I was up to 5,000, 7,000 unique conversations. So I don't know if those are unique users or they're unique instances of people running Merlin, right?
Yeah.
So it was already hitting close to 10,000 in the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I did not have my security instructions totally worked out at the time. I had a couple things in there that made it difficult, but if you were really persistent, you can get to my entire instruction set, right?
Yeah.
And someone did. Someone got to my entire instruction set, and they went and they created a GPT. They didn't even change the name. They called it Merlin, the job application helper, right?
That's very creative. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Pasted the entire instruction set verbatim into theirs and published it. And somebody, I think, tipped me off to it, and I went and I started engaging with it, and I realized it was 100% what I had written. I would have been okay if they had used it as a springboard and modified it and changed it and added their own flair to it. But it was, I even asked Merlin who the author was, and it said me.
Oh God, yeah.
Fake Merlin,
this is like those.
Was the author. And I said, how do I contact the author? And it referenced my website.
Oh my God.
So it was
This is like
crazy.
those old examples when people would like just copy someone's portfolio,
Yep.
like their web design portfolio, and then everyone would be like, you didn't even change the profile
Yeah,
photo."
exactly. Exactly.
Wow, wow. So what happened? Were you able to get it pulled, or
Yeah, so
was
I reached out to the author, who had then changed his name to a bunch of pseudonyms, and I
wow,
had
wow.
had issued a cease and desist, and then I went and I provided very negative feedback on on their fake Merlin.
Yeah,
I reported them to
yeah,
OpenAI, and I was, I was livid, right?
yeah,
And
of
I'm
course.
not making any money off of this, right?
Yeah, so that
Yeah.
should be it should be pointed out that you put a tremendous amount of work, time, and effort into doing a thing that, again, at this point, I mean, there's no monetization in the ChatGPT store. There's nothing except for, the goodwill of the users who use it. And this is like the opposite of that.
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
So they took it. I reported them. They kept changing their name.
Weird.
Then they changed the contact address in my website, and eventually they either unpublished or were yanked from the store.
Right.
And
I mean,
this
yeah,
it
yeah,
brings up an interesting question around,
yeah,
the CEO of NVIDIA said a couple of weeks ago that prompt engineering is the new coding, right?
Yep.
And so if that's the case, you can protect code, right? It's intellectual property. Should you be able to protect prompts? You know, and like we saw, Merlin isn't just like a prompt or like five
yeah,
prompts, right? It's close to 100
yeah,
prompts. It is in essence akin to code,
yeah,
right? So should there be protection for code
yeah,
or for prompts? And there are other platforms now who are beginning to uh, introduce this idea of protection, so that you can't skim and scam
yeah.
prompts from folks.
Yeah, I think
It
at one
seems.
point we even, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying it's not that big of a point. It's just like you can even see that there have been like people trying to sell prompts for making images. That was an early example. Like, hey, like we spent this time like fine tuning how to make a golden unicorn jumping over a rainbow or like whatever. So here it is. But yeah,
Yeah,
Andrew, what were you gonna say?
It seems that apart from the philosophical questions that are worth talking about, like, so is it code or is it enough like code that it should be protected the same way? But it is a little bit like a Wild West right now when you consider that Copilot in GitHub is happy to change the license agreement for the code that it's injecting into your, JavaScript function to calculate pi or something, and it's taken it from a repository that may very well be available publicly, but has specific licensing requirements that it just ignores. I think it's common the common sort of feeling about the ChatGPT store is like kind of like custom GPTs, which is they've been released, but it's all beta, it's all in flux. They're still trying to figure out what to do, and I think that the architecture of the way that custom GPTs came about doesn't it's not an intellectual property security first design, right?
right.
By its own definition. So it's OpenAI, it seems, is a little bit slow to patching some of these issues or these
Yeah,
holes. But I saw that there's, like, for one thing, when Jeremy and I first started experimenting with custom GPTs, the the fact that you could, when you switched back and forth between, to that WYSIWYG interface, that it would change, overwrite, negate the work that you were doing in the configure screen. If that it was, and there's no version control, right? But so I see that version control is now coming out in an upcoming release for the custom GPTs, and so slowly but surely, they will bring the tool more into line with what our expectations of a tool that feels that works the way that we think it does.
Yeah.
But
true. I mean, they've had other things that they've been.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot
But
of
I do
growth.
think it is an interesting question because, like, again, the point of the one of the points of the GPT store is like we want you to create things that are of value to the community, which by its very nature means you're creating things that are of value.
yeah.
And so you kind of want like how do you reconcile those? Okay, I'm looking at the time and being the taskmaster that I am. I'm noticing it is 7 p.m. We've been doing it, but Kier, who I think is in the background, I'm curious if there are any questions from the chat. Would be happy to kind of field those. If there's not, because people do look at this in the future, and then we put these recordings up. We don't always get immediate questions, but if there happen to be, we kind of love to take them. And if not, we can kind of go from there. But I'm assuming Kier, maybe you're in the background. Oh, okay. Yeah. Any questions? Okay. So I'll repeat the question just because our audience can't hear it. So can Merlin suggest training or training videos? I think, did I get all that right?
Yeah, and I think I'm guessing specifically when it comes to something like the SWOT analysis, where these are growth areas or opportunities to develop or potential risks.
So if it
And
identifies a weakness, can it suggest a way to address that weakness? Yeah. Okay. So I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
I did have that feature built in before, and what I found was that I myself, like, even though it would give me some like, sometimes it would give me some like articles or YouTube videos to look at. I felt that I didn't have a level of trust in the recommendations.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah.
But what you can do is you can ask it for your weaknesses. You can say, based on this weakness, um, uh, come up with a 3-day plan for how I might begin to learn this skill, right? Or a 5-day plan, and it'll break it down. I'll say, like, day one, research this and go here and there. And I had mixed results with it, but I'm going to go ahead and prompt it to address the weaknesses from the SWOT analysis and see if it's worth showing.
Sure.
Yes, the short answer is yes, but I found that the recommendations that it makes are not always that great.
Right. Okay. All right. Well.
So can I ask a question? Because I'm set. I think there are a couple of innovative things that you've done in your creating this custom GPT, and one of them is to leverage the idea of these knowledge documents for the entire instruction set. And I know that I guess I'm curious to know what you've learned as a result of doing that. If you see a benefit, would you recommend it to budding custom GPT authors to consider abstracting things out of the main instructions and putting them into those documents?
Yeah, I would say probably not yet, and here's why. I think right now, the window, the configure window where you put in your instructions today, that has a limitation of 8,000 characters. I learned that the hard way by hitting that limit, and you see an error. Something red shows up in the background. And it says that you can only do 8,000 characters. I don't know how many other people are going to run into this problem. So I think for the majority of use cases, 8,000 characters is a lot. So I don't think you'll need to do a lot with, housing some of those instructions in the knowledge base. So one, that. Two, with the current release of GPT-4, it has some limitations. There are some issues around memory, like how much it remembers in a session. It has it begins to choke if some of the prompts are a little complex. I've had it sometimes where I've gone through the process and I've had it like go back and like redo my cover letter like 2 or 3 times, and then it'll say, unfortunately I can't continue because I don't have the job description.
Right.
I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
So it gets to a point where it runs out of memory, right? Or it begins to get very forgetful, that it forgets other things that you've given it. So they need to address that problem. And I'm pulling up the tool that I use to maybe show exactly what you're talking about.
As you're doing that, I'm going to say it's pretty impressive that you have created this thing that's pushing the very limits of what this fairly bleeding edge technology is doing. So that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. Just keep pushing it until it breaks, and then figure out,
Yeah,
around it.
I had planned a release, like a major overhaul of Merlin, because once I discovered that you could put these instructions in the knowledge base, I thought, and there's no limitation to the characters. I thought, great, I'm going to go nuts. I'm going to create all different kinds of extra features. So let's see. Do you see what I see?
Yeah, looking at a coding.
Okay, perfect. So
ID.
this is brackets. I'm on a Mac. So this is just markup coding tool. And what I like about it is that I can open all these files at the same time and kind of like look at them. So you can see here, like, I've got all these files follow a similar schema, right? The title, the temperature, the skills, the actions, the output, right, over and over. So this was part of my major overhaul for Merlin. I was so happy and proud to have done it. I loaded it all into GPT and it totally crapped out. It came out of the gate obstinate as all get out.
Too much, right?
It was too much, and I think, because I don't know what's happening in the background.
Right.
I don't know if it's loading the entire 12, all 12 documents, or if it only loads them as it needs them. I had hoped it was going to load them as it needs them, but basically I pushed the limits of what it could do. So I'm experimenting right now with only putting things into the knowledge base after the meat and potatoes of Merlin has completed. So like the cheat sheet, for example, the instruction for the cheat sheet with the emojis and the formatting, all of that is housed in a separate text file in the knowledge base. Because at that point you're done, right?
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's like you're basically taking software principles, applying them to a natural language processing system, and then it's like a loop to loop.
And using this somewhat hacky, tool that they've created, which I'm thankful for, because the other folks, like Anthropic, they don't have anything like this. There are a lot of websites coming out where you could like go build a GPT for a small fee. And then you're limited to whatever GPT version and tokens you have available. So it's been a tremendous learning experience. I've had a lot of fun building these GPTs. I feel like solving this problem, using this to create a set of tools, has been incredibly educational and rewarding.
Well, and you've done a fantastic job. I mean, really, it's impressive. I think, Andrew, I've been playing in this field for, of a 6 months or however long it is. And this is really some of the most impressive work I've seen. Speaking for myself, I'm thinking
Certainly the most useful.
Yeah, and that's the other part of this. It's not just like a party trick, which is what a lot of ChatGPT is. These are things that I think tons of people can use and benefit their lives and get a new job. I mean, it's fantastic, man, what you did. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. And thanks to everyone watching. And now and in the future, we'll be cranking out some more of these with or without guests. And for now, well, I guess farewell.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thank you, Dune.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.